The Social Network is a historical fiction drama that loosely tells the story of how Mark Zuckerberg, a socially awkward computer genius, and his friends collectively create Facebook and change the way the world connects. As Mark finds more and more success creating the platform, he continues to forfeit more and more chances of creating connections in his own life. To put it very simply, Aaron Sorkin wrote and David Fincher directed 2 hours of what I believe to be the perfect movie. Let's begin.
What I saw was, against a very modern backdrop, a story as old as storytelling itself, of friendship, loyalty, power, betrayal, class, jealousy, all these things that Aeschylus would have written about, Shakespeare would have written about, a few decades ago, Patty Chayefsky would have written about. Again, I was just lucky. None of those guys were available, so I got to write about it.
There's a lot that can be said about this film, but I've recently discovered that a lot of my passion derives from its use of character, specifically our protagonist, Mark.
In the first 5 minutes, we can easily come to the conclusion that Mark is in some sort of pursuit of fulfillment.
So am I. So is everyone. But I think Mark's pursuit is particularly interesting when you continue to watch the film and eventually figure out just how much he's willing to pay for his idea of success that he thinks will bring him fulfillment.
So, what is Mark's idea of success? What exactly does he want? Mark wants to join a final club on his Harvard campus. Final clubs are highly exclusive campus organizations that Mark thinks will lead to a better life, i.e., fulfillment.
And we soon find out that he's willing to pay his intelligence and capabilities. He's willing to do whatever.
In the very first scene, Mark lays out his pursuit to Erica, the girl he's currently dating. He thinks the only thing in his way is the fact that he hasn't found a way to stand out yet.
Does that mean you actually got nothing wrong?
I could row crew or invent a $25 PC.
Or you get into a final club?
Or I get into a final club.
He's smart, but completely negligent of the fact that he's insecure. And that insecurity fuels his selfishness and inconsideration.
His own lack of character is standing in the way of personal fulfillment. And not only does he not see it this way, but he completely detests the notion that he has to be likable.
What a jury sees when they look at a defendant. Clothes, hair, speaking style, likability.
Likability.
When Erica brings Mark's blind spot up to his attention and breaks up with him because of it, he later slanders her on his blog.
Still fueled up with embarrassment, Mark hacks the Facebooks and directories of multiple houses on campus and creates a website that ranks female students in order of their attractiveness. It's so popular it gets 22,000 hits in 2 hours. And here, Mark has a chance at introspection. He's just been broken up with abruptly because of his character, and instead of meditating on that, he uses his intelligence and capabilities to create an impressive but heinous website.
He doesn't even take a last sip of his beer before he's beelining to his dorm room to get all of this done.
Mark has a chance to confront himself and the truth about how his shortcomings are the only things standing in the way of him living a better life. Instead, he uses his capabilities to compensate for his lack of character, and he continues to do that for the entirety of the film.
Mark's website stunt catches the attention of Porcellian Final Club members Cameron and Tyler Winklevoss and their friend Divya Narenda. The group later asks Mark to program their app, a dating platform strictly for Harvard students called Harvard Connection. They suggest that this project could help rehabilitate Mark's image.
It's never really elaborated on, but I think this triggers some of Mark's insecurity. Here he is standing in the house of a final club, talking to some of its members about a stunt that he thinks is commendable, but they think is a bit scandalous. Mark thinks that his entry into a final club is solely about what he can do, but the twins and Divya suggest that who he actually is a bit more valuable.
Mark leaves the meeting resenting this ideology. He probably assumes that the friends think he doesn't have the right reputation for a final club. And this idea is given further proof when Eduardo, who has a clean and honest image, tells Mark he got punched by a final club called the Phoenix. After the meeting, Mark has yet another opportunity for introspection. He's potentially been given the chance to actually accomplish his want of getting into a final club, when approached to assist people who are already in one. But instead, he rejects it, not directly to their faces, but eventually when he ultimately does not program the app. He rejects the opportunity because it's offered under the guise that Mark needs to change who he is, which he does need to, but he's unconvinced of.
Now we're at a point where Mark is even more embarrassed and even more insecure, and he doubles down on the lie that he has to do something big to feel fulfilled instead of just work on becoming a better person.
Now, instead of simply going after access to a final club, Mark wants to create a final club where he's president and all the shots are up to him. He shares the idea with Eduardo and asks him for a startup loan of $1,000, to which Eduardo cheerfully supports and gives away, officially joining as the CFO.
From this point forward, Mark is a machine. He's always working, always developing, always coming up with some kind of idea. The only problem is that he's neglecting Divya and the Winklevosses in their attempts to reach him for them to get started on their platform.
To their dismay, Mark, his roommates, and Eduardo launch the Facebook, a social media platform that allows Harvard students to share their lives online. A similar concept to the idea they brought to Mark, but not the same one. As 650 students sign up for the Facebook on the first day, Divya and the Winklevosses send a cease and desist letter to Mark shortly after.
Mark is now at a point where he has successfully found a path of fulfillment. And despite the threat of being sued, he's pretty much on top of the world. Because not only do people know him,
Your friend. Is that Mark Zuckerberg?
Excuse me, Mark? Yeah.
but they want to be attached to him socially.
I'm Christy Lee. This is Alice. Hi.
Oh, very nice to meet you.
Facebook thing when you get home. Maybe we can all go out and grab a drink.
In the face of this success, Mark once again has the opportunity to develop not just in his work, but as a person. He spots Erica eating out with friends one night and attempts to apologize. This attempt to embrace the truth is surprising, but commendable. The only problem is that Erica shoots him down.
And this encourages Mark to fall further down his current rabbit hole and expand the Facebook to other campuses. I don't think Mark can take rejection, realistically, especially not personal rejection. Being better doesn't come as easy to him as just working more.
On this journey of expansion, Mark meets Sean Parker, a notorious businessman and creator of Napster, a music platform that allowed users to share MP3 files with each other. It eventually had to close down due to bankruptcy and copyright infringement lawsuits from the music industry.
Out of all the meetings that Mark and Eduardo have attended, Mark seems to oddly favor this one. Mark honestly just favors Sean. And the two men, they have similarities, both having found technological success at a young age and maturity at that. And despite Sean's failures, Mark seems to admire Sean's character.
Sean comes into the meeting and owns the room. The staff know him by name, he orders all the food and drinks, picks up the bill, and suggests that they drop the from the Facebook's title.
Mark honestly just thinks that Sean is cool. So cool to the point that he takes his advice to move to Palo Alto for the summer to expand Facebook.
One night, Mark and Sean are out at a club. Sean flaunts the fact that his date is a Victoria's Secret model and begins to tell Mark everything that confirms his lie of doing more instead of being better in order to be fulfilled.
Sean successfully puts on a facade of having it all figured out and having reached a certain level of fulfillment himself. He becomes tangible evidence of Mark's lie of doing more to be fulfilled instead of being better. And we get to a point where Mark is far beyond the point of admiration for Sean. He wants to be Sean. And in a final attempt of pursuing the truth of what it actually takes to be fulfilled, Mark asks Sean if he still thinks of the girl who inspired him to create Napster because Mark still thinks of Erica. But Sean says no. And I think that gave Mark a green light to get rid of any kind of humbling feeling.
Later on, Eduardo visits the Palo Alto house from New York. Mark forgets to pick him up from the airport, and he arrives on the front porch drenched in rain. In this scene, Eduardo finds out that Sean, whom he doesn't really care for, is living in the summer house that he is single-handedly funding.
It's now revealed to Eduardo the depths to which Mark has sunk in his pursuit of fulfillment. It's gotten to a place where Mark is becoming more and more negligent when it comes to his relationship to his only close companion, which is Eduardo, as he nurtures more and more his relationship with his biggest cosign, which is Sean. It's a thing where with Sean, Mark just has to do more. But with Eduardo, Mark has to be more.
In response to Mark's negligence, Eduardo freezes the account funding the summer expansion stay, to which Mark replies, "Did you like being nobody? I'm not going back to that." Mark believes that the creation of Facebook has made him somebody. He thinks that it has brought and will keep bringing him fulfillment, so a threat to the health of the company is a threat to his pursuit of wholeness. The two friends confess feelings on the dispute, come to a common ground, and then rejoice because of a $500,000 investment recently made into the company. Mark tells Eduardo, "We did it." He believes that they've been successful.
After the investment, Eduardo returns to California to sign some paperwork. In the very next scene, we fast forward to a future lawsuit between Mark and Eduardo, where Eduardo's lawyers ask him if he was aware that he was signing his own debt certificate. To which Eduardo says no, and looks over to Mark and says, "I was your only friend." This scene tells us that Mark will eventually reach a point where he betrays Eduardo to a point of absolutely no return.
Back to present day. Everything seems to have reached a standstill. We see Sean coaching Mark before he goes into a meeting. He literally gives Mark the words to say, and Mark agrees.
This scene in present day tells us that Mark eventually reaches the point where he pledges all allegiance to Sean.
After this stunt, new investors poured into the company. Eduardo explains how he came back to California for the million-member party and to sign more documents, only to find out that the documents were seeking his approval and the dilution of his shares. In the climax of the film, Eduardo confronts Mark about this. Instead of apologizing, Mark doubles down and tells Eduardo that he should have expected this and known better. He then allows Sean to accost Eduardo.
At the end of this sequence, Mark officially picks a side. When it comes to Sean and Eduardo, Mark can't be in relationship with both of them, at least not at the same time. Mark can't embrace the truth and carry the lie. So he picks a side, and I don't think he thinks he's picking the wrong one when it comes to Sean, because at this point, Mark has success. And isn't this amount of success supposed to be fulfilling?
Isn't 1 million members supposed to be fulfilling? Yes, literally yes. But the price Mark paid was far too expensive. In the final scene, Mark is alone, yet again. He is extremely successful, but alone. He tries one last time to embrace the truth as he friends Erica on Facebook. We never get the chance to see if this attempt is successful, but that's not really the point. We meet Mark as a selfish and socially inept teenager who wants to feel fulfilled.
He thinks being exclusive, like exclusivity, is the entryway to his desire. But it's not. It's personal connection. But then he finds out that in order to gain personal connections, he has to develop himself, develop his character. So he comes up with his own version of connection, which becomes Facebook. And he doesn't just change his campus, he changes the literal world around him.
In the midst of doing something so impressive, he neglects the people around him and himself, and finds himself with no personal connection at all. And then
I think we're all on some sort of path or pursuit of fulfillment. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, not inherently. But I think it's important to understand what you are and are not willing to pay in order to achieve that. Or else you might find yourself extremely accomplished, but extremely alone. And at that point, it's just like, what's the point of success if there's nobody to share with?